great show this morning, man. It is Friday, April
TGIF.
19th. Hey, I love Monday's my favorite day of the week because most people are tired. I come out swinging. I love it. Come out fight ready every day. Great show in store for you today. Savant Friday. We'll check in with Doug Dean down in Birmingham. Dave Tompkins in the Low Country over in Beaufort, South Carolina. Frank Duffy out in Palm Springs, California.
I'm just glad I'm not trailing a truck right now to steal the internet down the highway.
You get an award for that. That's called finding excuses to win. That's what you do, Brenden.
Well, actually not. It's called, having a dad named Buddy Martin.
Yeah. You're just industrious. You're a winner. We know most people would say, "Oh, no show today." We made it happen.
No, we don't
God
do that.
love truckers.
We'll tell that story later, but it's a good one. It's a good one.
Hey.
God love. That was his Wi-Fi password, by the way.
Hey,
his Wi-Fi password was toot toot.
I love it. Smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Do that. And allow notifications on your Android or your iPhone. You love the SEC and you love the South, the Southern footprint, or wherever you are and you want to hear about it, we're your show. We're coming right back. Get pen and paper handy because there's going to be a lot of notes to take. Friday's edition of Sidelines coming up now.
SEC Savant Friday.
SEC Sidelines, Sports Network, and SECU, and the Texas podcast drops tonight.
Woo!
Don't forget that.
Hook 'em horns.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you. Frank Duffy, God love you. You've been wrestling with them angels, as Coach Dye would say out there after that unbelievable story, and we'll talk about it during the show today. God love you. I had Audrey read that last night. We just got back in from Atlanta, and we were both shaking our heads. Dave Tompkins, good to see you. Doug Dean's going to join us here in just a few minutes. Brenden Martin, our executive producer. Y'all, yesterday we had storms so bad down in Ocala. He had trees down in the neighborhood, knocked all the power lines down. Brenden, being the industrious executive producer, badass that he is, went to Starbucks. They had no Wi-Fi.
None.
Went to a truck stop, and they had it, but he followed a trucker on the interstate within – basically, he was drafting off his back wheel so he could get the Wi-Fi signal, and we made the show happen. You hung in there and you fought, and you brought the damn thing home.
I was driving down to I-75 like this with a guy who recognized me in the truck. I saw his Gator sticker in the back of his truck, and he deduced that I needed internet, and we talked. I got up the air, and then he goes, "I got to get down. Which way are you headed?" I said, "Well, I'm wherever you're going. Head southbound. Get on my butt. Let's go."
Meanwhile, on I-10 and not I-10 in New Orleans, some other heroics occurred.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
And Frank, you were out. That was what was so crazy. You were out in Palm Springs, California, when you had the close call yesterday.
It's unbelievable. So Rhonda and I went to Baton Rouge over the weekend, LSU spring game, went to New Orleans. We had a French Quarter Festival, had dinner with our daughter who's graduating in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I can't wait. I'm ready to get her and LSU off the payroll. But we decided we were going to come out. We have an event out here in Palm Springs. Rhonda had an event that she wanted to go to. And as you know, with Bengal One, we love traveling in our RV. And we kind of jones for it when it's not fall because we go to so many football games in it. But in the fall, and it doesn't look like my Tigers are going to be making it to Omaha again this year. So I know I'm not going to be able to make that in a month. So we wound up, coming out to Palm Springs. So everything was great, uneventful. We got to the Arizona-California state line, and I literally was about to pull over and get diesel when I had the most horrifying sound you will ever have in an RV. I had a blowout. My front passenger tire exploded. And when I tell you, it took everything in my power, my wrist is still hurting, to keep this RV upright. And I'm telling you, I crossed the median not once, but twice. It took me 3/4 of a mile to finally get this thing righted. Had I not had 175,000 miles of RV driving under my belt, Rhonda and I and our little dog would not be here today.
Wow.
There is no doubt in my mind, that God had a hand on that wheel, because every turn that I made kept it from flipping. And I hit it at the right time. I mean, it was serpentine the whole way. And the weird thing was, when it first started happening, it was like a bad nightmare that I kept trying to wake up from. And it wasn't until I finally, after hitting a tree with our tow vehicle, it got totaled yesterday. Until we got to a stop after hitting the tree, and I landed this brickbat in the right hand shoulder of the road on the highway. Until I did that, it didn't feel real.
No,
it was surreal the entire time, and it was 3/4 of a mile, rubber everywhere. It was, and here's the crazy part: had it been two miles earlier, I was on the downside of one of those Arizona mountains, and if it would have been 2 miles later and not in the valley, I'd have been going up another mountain. But it was those typical horrible right-hand lane, bad highways where every truck goes over, and it hadn't been fixed, and it was potholes. And I rode in the left lane, which was much better. But when I got in the right lane to get over to get some nice red state diesel as opposed to blue state diesel, which is $1.50 more because of all the taxes, the second I got in that right lane, it blew. And I'm telling you, it was a white knuckle ride for 3/4 of a mile.
That is, I mean, you think about blowouts. When you see an 18-wheeler, they have 18 tires. Look at that. Good gosh. Yeah. Bengal won.
Bengal won.
God.
Hey, let me tell you something. Bengal 1 is one sturdy MF, because these things, when they torque, if this would have been a lesser coach that didn't have the weight behind it, Bengal's got a little bit the caboose. I'm telling you, if this would have been like a gas-driven one and not one of these big diesel pushers, that thing would have twisted like a beer can. And I'll tell you what else saved us. I chewed out Rhonda, not really bad, but I said, why are we getting rid of my yellow LSU Wrangler, that wonderful little tow vehicle, which I could scoot around in? Why are we getting a Lincoln Navigator, this big old giant beast to drive behind us? Well, that big anchor, that Navigator, probably also kept our tail end from going off the road. But it gave its life. It sacrificed. If there was an RV Medal of Honor, it would be getting it posthumously today, because it kept us from going over. But it got totaled. I drove it over to the collision place yesterday. It could still drive. And then the guy walked up. He goes, "Your wife called up and said you were bringing this over because it had a little damage." He goes, "That's not a little damage." He goes, "I'm totaling this for you." So it's been a surreal day. So as most of the time, as happens in RV world, it's not all gumbo pots and games. Here's the ugly side of it. We're sitting here at the Freightliner in Phoenix, Arizona. Had to turn back, come back to Phoenix. So we're here until they can fix my radiator. They put the new tire on. We're heading on to Palm Springs. We're carrying on, boys. Just because the first bullet whizzes past your head, you carry on. But I think there will be new battle plans once we get back to Georgia.
Right.
Get back to safe behind enemy lines.
Any less
Yeah,
of a producer, and there wouldn't have been a
crazy.
show yesterday, but Brenden powered through.
Okay.
Drafting the truck on I-75. And thank goodness the Medal of Honor is not posthumous. It's still a Medal of Honor, but it's not posthumous. So we're just happy you're here to tell the story.
Yes.
To try to put a little levity into it, but that doesn't really warrant levity. But maybe God was telling you not to enter the state of California.
Very true. Hey, look, I could literally see the state line from where I was. There was no doubt. And an interesting part was having you, your wife, and your little dog have to stand in the sagebrush off of the road in Phoenix, because the real danger, honest to God, I was more petrified being outside of the RV as I-10 traffic was whizzing by at 80 miles an hour, because the speed limits are higher there. Wheeling by, the RV is like, gyrating on the road from the wind, and we're sitting out there at sagebrush. I mean, just waiting for that Western Diamondback or those Scorpions to start coming out. And it was right at that. It was beautiful. And Ron even said, she goes, look how beautiful this sunset is. My wife is forever the optimist of trying to look at things in a positive way. And so we were sitting out there in the sand dunes while the big, and look, when you break down in one of these babies, it's not like Joe the tower is going to be able to come get you. They had what was called the monster tow truck that came out and lifted this beast off the ground to go the 2 hours back to Phoenix. So, hey, let me tell you, I couldn't perish in this damn thing. LSU's got Alabama at home this year. There's no way I can cash out with a repeat of that 2-point win. So we hung in there. Gumbo will be served from this again. I'm looking forward to more sedate times in Bengal
Well,
one.
Anytime you travel in those things, it just a blowout is something that everybody.
It is.
It makes you go buy new tires. I can tell you that. That is for damn sure. Glad you're all right. Look, there is.
Thank you, buddy.
The world of college football, as we know it right now, it is a bit crazy. How many of y'all are looking at the transfer portal tracker? I mean, it's like the ticker, Dave, at the bottom of the screen for the stock market. You've got guys now that are visiting your campus in January, going to another school, and coming back at the end of spring practice. I mean,
you can't keep up with it. I mean, I would rather keep up with the NASDAQ ticker, stream, because who knows? I mean, what's going to happen? I don't know. I mean, it's just so crazy to compare right now to even like 3 or 4 years ago. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, your nutty thing is that you've got there's no rule. Is there any new ruling about, like, within the SEC, you can't transfer, you can't just play musical chairs within the conference, but you can anywhere else. And I mean, you really, if you were issuing a depth chart as a coach, you're nuts, because these kids will look on there and go, I mean, God forbid your starting quarterback gets hurt. Who's going to play? You're going to have to, maybe the GA has some eligibility left on the sidelines.
You'll know my depth chart when we go out for the kickoff. That's basically what it's going to come down to. This is a week by week anomaly.
Yeah. And
look, I mean, it's gotten so crazy that you've got guys leaving and coming back to the same team. I mean, it's mind-blowing.
It is.
And going outside of the SEC to see how, like, this time a year ago, Coach Prime owned the transfer portal. Now he's being decimated by it. I mean, it's just how quickly fortunes can change, program by program, conference by conference. I read something yesterday that the coach most on the hot seat next year is Ryan Fox at Ohio State, because with all the benefits they've gotten from the portal and from NIL and their collective, if they don't win the national championship next year, it is a colossal failure. Yeah. And I really, it's more in basketball. I really see why coaches are increasingly saying, you know what, life's too short. I've had enough.
Yeah.
Dabo Sweeney might have been crazy like a fox, but the problem is, if everybody else is doing it, what's the old saying? If you're on the Serengeti, whether you're a lion or gazelle, you better be moving come sunup, no matter what. You got to keep up with the Joneses. And look, look, prime example of Prime You live by the sword, you die by the sword. If they come in, it's like somebody, a woman or a man that has an affair on their first wife, and then they get shocked that the second wife goes and runs around on him. Well, duh, that's how you got her in the first place. Well, that's exactly what's happening with the portal situation. And Nick Saban called it. Once again, I hate saying anything nice about Nick, but Nick called this thing early on. He said, look, this is what's going to happen. I'll play it. I'll play it as good as you or better, but this is what's happened. And look, we all call this. Rob, Dave, Brenden, this was before you were with us. But back in 2020, when we were on the beach on 30A, when we were figuring out that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 were spineless and gutless, that wasn't going to play, and we were sitting there talking about it, we said if this opens up and this type of portal comes out, it's going to change college sports, and it did. We called it that day.
And it hasn't ruined college sports.
Summer of 2020.
It hadn't ruined college sports, but I'll tell you what it's doing. There's no movement among fans yet. When the fans start to revolt, they'll start listening. And right now, the fans are just taking it and saying, well, that's just the way it is. Again, you can't allow your teenage children to run the household. And this, we got to get rid of this BS. These athletes are victims. I've had enough of that crap. I'll tell you who the victims are. It's the fans who are just getting pounded over the head with a stick. Buy season tickets, pay for priority seating, give to NIL. And by the way, buy a program which may be irrelevant by kickoff because several guys have already quit. You're screwing the fans. And I'm telling you, this we've got to look. Professional victimhood has been alive and well in this country for a long time. Dave Tompkins, there are a lot of people. You go in the Army. You may not like your original MOS or your whatever. You deal with it, don't you? You can't just pull over to the side of the road and quit. That's why God gave us windshield wipers.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, in my opinion, the area that's most exposed is the Southeast and the SEC primarily, but a little bit the ACC, but really the SEC, because our culture has been for decades is that Saturdays matter infinitely more than Sundays.
Yes.
In other parts of the country, even in Big Ten country, the Sundays matter just as much as Saturdays. Yeah. If we ever switch, if we ever say, hey, we're going to start watching the Falcons, we're going to start watching the Jaguars, we're going to start watching the Texans, we're going to start watching the Saints, and that's going to matter as much as,
Correct.
The Saints matter to Frank, but they don't matter as much as LSU. And if that switch flips and we do our errands on Saturday so we can watch the NFL on Sunday, game over.
Yeah.
It is game over. The college football will implode from the Southeast all the way out.
I live for my Saints, but I die for my Tigers.
Yeah, and think about this. On a Saturday, you're up at 5 or 6 in the morning on game day. Right. On Sunday, you're on the couch dozing in and out of sleep watching an NFL game, or you're doing multiple things. Our hearts, our souls, our DNA in the South is hardwired to college football. And you can say, well, and I'm tired of this narrative that, well, the coaches make all this money, the players should too. Try doing that in the business world when you're a 22-year-old college graduate working for a big company. Don't go tell the CEO, I should make as much as you do. You won't be hired. But look, I'm all for capitalism. I say this every day. But the portal, you look at some of these kids now that are going to 3 schools in 1 semester. How many people would tell their kids that's okay? Doug Dean in Birmingham. We've got 2, a Duffy, a Dean, Dave Tompkins, Rob Browne here with you. I've been watching this tracker portal, and Doug, we had a great show Monday when we were talking about it. There's a lot of movement in the aisles that's going on, and it is, putting out a depth chart right now, you're crazy. I like what you described about what they did at Ole Miss with their spring game, playing tag and all these other games. Look, Lane Kiffin, I love the guy as a coach, and I think Ole Miss is going to have a really good team this year. let's not get too cavalier, Doug Dean.
Yeah, well, good morning, guys. And Rob,
Good morning, buddy.
Literally, we're blessed, and you're blessed to be
Thank
on the
you.
show
Yeah.
this morning.
I am.
If you,
Good,
I don't know if
good
you're-
Lord was with me. Good Lord was with me.
Y'all be careful with your RV vehicle on the interstates. But Rob, if you're referring to the blasphemy, and by none other, it would have to be from Lane Kiffin of not playing a fake football game so that fans pretend that they're actually getting a clean read on what they've got. I don't know. This might be one of those rare occasions, Rob, that you and I have a slight difference. I think what Lane was doing was saying, listen, it's such a joke. You don't really get much out of the spring game, maybe here and there. The fans see it. Is Cam Coleman really a five-star like we think? But he's not going against quality defensive backs with playing exotic coverages or blitzes. So I think Kiffin's saying, I'm going to make this a fun party for the students. I'd be willing to bet, I haven't looked, but I bet he got a huge number of students show up. Why? Because there was a tug of war between the sororities. I mean, what more do you need on A-Day? And I think he's making it a recruiting event. Hey, players, if you come here, you're going to work hard during the spring, and there'll be some contact scrimmages. But while everybody else is having a real A-Day game and you're risking injury, we're just going to go out there and have a big party. So,
Yeah,
I don't know.
it was like
Lane a little.
It was like LSU's watermelon party at the end of spring, only that they had all the sorority girls come. Look, Lane's just a different cat. He really is, and I mean, I like his freshness, but it's more of a thumb, in the nose of convention is really what it is. I think Lane likes being Lane more than anything. I will tell you though, Doug, it was the worst example of bringing a knife to a gunfight that I've ever heard on social media when all of the Ole Miss people started trolling LSU fans by saying the 50-yard field was the same field we played with against Alabama in the national championship game, of which the barrage of "you haven't ever been to Atlanta" came out. Like, I've never heard the missiles come over.
See, yeah, I mean that's what's beautiful. Fan bases disagreeing with one another, and I have to disagree with Rob on. I think it's the first time I've ever disagreed with Rob in my life. Just prior to the show, he claimed that Haas's hat size was 7 3/4. It's at least 8.5. The great late Dan Blocker. It's at least 8.5.
I was telling Brenden I'm going to get him a hat from Hewlett and Dunn, a cowboy hat, and he just said he had a big head. Haas was a 10.
Yeah, you gonna fit Hop Sing up in that hat.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's my new nickname is Haas. So,
I love it.
Hey,
Lauren Green, Dan Blocker, the whole gang. Michael Landon on there. That show had lots of surprises.
Well, it never did. Let me say something, though, at y'all. We had Jake Wimberly on the show Wednesday morning, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive in Jackson, Mississippi. Jake has a great show, and he puts out these matrix of forecasting. He's got LSU chalked up at 9-3 for this coming year, and he can give you an explanation. Check out his matrix. But guys, he pointed out something, Doug. Last year, just every quarterback that started in the Pac-12 was a transfer quarterback, and in the SEC, damn near every quarterback that started, including the Heisman Trophy winner, was a transfer. I'll start with you, Doug. Who's the first guy you think that's going to leave Auburn in the quarterback room?
Probably Holden Geriner. And you pronounce it Geriner. It's Geriner, people mess it up.
Geriner.
I think he can get playing time at a non-SEC school, and you hate to see a kid's legacy, his story be, I got to be fourth string on my team and say War Eagle for 4 years. So it's getting kind of crowded in the QB room, barring injury. He got out of spring without any issue. But what Hugh Freeze needs to think about, I'm sure he is racking his brain, is after Peyton Thorne, who had his good moments, but you still see some of the limitations he's got. There was nobody distinguishing themselves, and that's forgivable for Walker White, a true freshman who is a physical specimen. I think he's going to end up being a real contributor before it's over with at Auburn. But, boy, it's a tough spot for Freeze. If you go in the portal to get somebody, they're going to want to have a chance to really compete in fall with Peyton Thorne. And if you do, so if you bring them in, that's not going to be a feel-good for Peyton Thorne or the other QBs like Hank Browne. But if you don't, and Peyton Thorne suffers an injury, your season could be up in smoke. So Gardner would be my guess.
Yeah. Dave, looking at Alabama, Ty Simpson, we ride New Orleans, Gary Harris on this week. I think I'm going to predict it right now. I think by about mid-season, I think Ty Simpson's the starting quarterback at Alabama. I think the kind of offense Kalen DeBoer runs, he's got Jalen Milroe out there right now because I don't think he wants to deal with – look, Jalen Milroe was a pain in the ass last year. I can tell you right now he was suspended straight up for the way he acted after the Texas game last year. His parents, they were in Saban's face. Saban going to put up with that crap. Kalen DeBoer.
I didn't know that.
Has him right now. That's just what I think happened. It's just what I think. Yeah. I think he half-assed it in practice after the Texas loss and the criticism that he took. And I think Jalen Milroe was good enough last year, but I think Ty Simpson for what Kalen DeBoer does. Dave, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's. I think it's really going to be an examination of Jalen Milroe's character because, I mean, his character. It's all our perception of his character and what do we really know about his character. But here's a guy that was a pariah after the Texas game and then worked his way into hero status, and then you have the final play of in the Rose Bowl and what happened there and the reaction afterwards and all that. And so now he's the incumbent, he's the starter. There's questions about his fit with the Kalen DeBoer offense and is he going to adjust and at what point is a change made? And then it's does Ty stick around? I think he will. Has someone whispered to him like, "Hey, it's your job." As soon as he first slip, it's his job. It's just I don't know. I really don't know. I admire Kalen DeBoer for coming to Alabama at this particular time. Right in the pure crucible of NIL and the portal, and to follow Saban. Fans in Tuscaloosa, T-Town, they're not patient there. And we have precedents with when Coach Bryant left and, what the late Ray Perkins endured, and then what Bill Curry endured and how it took 25 years to get to Saban. And this is, this year was going to be a fascinating to begin with the 12-team playoff. But now with someone replacing Saban, with the volatile quarterback situation that already pre-existed, I'm bewildered at this point. Just that's all I can say.
Rob, I think, and I'm only throwing this in there as an Auburn guy because I have some good Bama friends, and there's an opinion that it's not coincidental that Washington quarterback Austin Mack, not just weeks after DeBoer was hired, transferred to Alabama. This kid, I think, is a big, tall, 6'5", 6'6" guy. He would have already been in the system and the terminology with DeBoer at Washington. So I'm not casting aspersions on Ty Simpson. He might win it if Milroe doesn't excel. But I think that if there is a controversy, 3 to 5 games into the for Crimson Tide people, it might be that Milroe is doing well, but the ceiling is not high enough to try to go win a championship, and that's going to be an unpleasant, uncomfortable decision that Kalen DeBoer might face before midseason.
I mean, it's two different. It seems like it's two different offensive philosophies. DeBoer's is find, first check, second check, third check, find the open receiver as fast as possible, get the ball in his hands, whether even if it's a dump off, and get positive yardage. The legacy philosophy, going even when it was a game manager, and then of course with Bryce Young, it was make plays. And Jalen Milroe can make some plays with his arm and certainly with his legs. And that's now transcending to the playmaker is going to be the guy you throw to, not the guy throwing the ball.
Yeah, and Frank, let me throw this one at you. And I'd heard about Austin Mack a lot from a friend of mine that really follows Alabama football. And he said, that's the guy that if DeBoer could say today, and Doug's right. He goes, he already knows my system, but he's got to play nice because he's coming into Alabama. But also, I'm going to just make a point. Maybe the most shameful moment I watched in TV in college football last year was at the end of the Iron Bowl when Robbie Ashford, went up there and man-hugged, Jalen Milroe after he had just interviewed with CBS after winning the game. Like he battled him for a full 60. That was Peyton Thorne that did that. I'm glad that guy's gone to South Carolina. Good riddance. Frank?
Yeah. Well, look, Alabama's got options. I think DeBoer coming in there, to Dave's point, it's more to do with the optics of being a new coach and taking over for the greatest coach of all time. He might want to make decisions, but he's going to have to be very sensitive to the room and to the boosters. So I think you're going to see a true competition. But, Jalen Milroe, for whatever you want to say, once he got out of that South Florida game, he was a different player. And if you take away the last play of the Rose Bowl, I mean, he played extremely well down the stretch. So yeah, I think he's going to be your incumbent. I get the fact that he might not have DeBoer's system down, but I think it's going to be hard to replace him after that 9 to 10 game run, 11 game run that he went on. I mean, look, I watched every play of that South Florida. I had it on my 4 screens in the room. I watched every play of that South Florida game, and it was like a light switch came on in that rain fest in the fourth quarter, and Jalen Milroe was a different quarterback. So I think he's going to be the quarterback to go. I will tell you very briefly, my answer for LSU is real simple. Nussmeier is playing for the next 2 years, and Bryce Underwood's going to come in, and he's going to sit next year and watch at his feet. And then Underwood will be the quarterback going forward. This kid is an uber talent. Our days of plucking Heisman trophies winners from the portal, I think, are over. If we're going to get another one, it's going to be homegrown with both these two kids.
Yeah, and look, Milroe's a hell of an athlete. I just don't think he's the right fit for the system that Kalen DeBoer runs. And, Doug, you talk about Austin Mack, familiar with what Kalen DeBoer does. Let's look at another quarterback situation. And I think right here in our backyard, look at Florida. You've got Mertz, the starter, and then Lagway, the stud out of Texas. I mean, Florida's done well before with rotating quarterbacks in situations with Chris Leak back in 2006 and Tim Tebow. You see that happening again? Is Billy Napier bold enough to try it?
Who are you putting that to, Rob?
You.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't track the Florida Gators with no early warning a day before.
All I'll say is whatever Billy Napier tries better work or
Well, I mean, listen. You want to talk about the Gators? Someone said Gators.
Yeah. Let's get Brenden on this.
I know a few things about those guys.
Lagway's a good. Doug, I'm just saying.
I think Lagway. The conversation with Lagway after the spring game was like you would hope. I think what you would hope to get, which was he looked a little lost in the first half, and then the light bulb went off when they introduced a little competition. He's a natural, athlete and competitor, and you could see a difference once you start to engage it, which is really fantastic because usually that takes a whole season if ever. So once I said the game starts to slow down, I think he's going to be really special. But right now, Billy Napier and the Florida Gators are damn happy to have themselves Graham Mertz back there.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
he's
Doug.
poised and very ready for what's coming up, because this is his last season, and I think and coach is going, and Napier wants, they said in his press conference last week, we're working on him making not worrying so much about having a clean game, but how to now take calculated risk, push it a little bit further.
Right.
Try to be a playmaker, but don't try, like what's that fine line, right? Because that's the bang on him was when he came in, is that he number one picks of his freshman year. He threw more picks or something. I forget what the number was, but so I think there was like, you go hardcore one direction, and now they're sort of coming here. I think Graham Mertz could have a very extraordinary season, and I think he is a talent. Urban Meyer is, said, look, I recruited the guy. Like, he wanted him to come play for him.
Yeah.
So he has got it in him, and he's watching him in practice and seeing him on the field. I go to all the games and shoot from the sidelines, and you get that vibe when you're out there, and you see if he's a field general. He's the guy you want to play for. He's got that, like, I don't know, like Terry Bradshaw mentality. He's out there telling jokes, smacking butts. Hey, boys, let's, you know what I mean? Like, he's that old school QB, and you love to play for him. And I think and that's old school. So Graham Mertz is very old school. We talk about this all the time, right? But he is very of that time, the time that we speak of so fondly. And I think that's the difference you see. I think he's going to be extraordinary.
Well, and Doug, didn't mean to kind of throw a curve at you, but I'm saying about the quarterback room. But I'm going to ask you, Doug, because you're so good with numbers and analytics, what room has gone a 180 more in the last decade? Than the running back room and the wide receiver room. Doug, you look at a running back room at Georgia or Auburn. Like look at Auburn's running back room now. It's good, but who can name the leading returning rusher, Doug Dean, in the SEC? We could rattle off half a dozen guys, but it's a hard one to think.
Major problems with the sound breaking up. Am I the only one, Rob?
Yeah, it's all good. It must. I mean, yeah, it's all good on our end. We can hear you.
I think that's better. I don't know if there's any Brenden has control over to fix, but let me give it a shot anyway. If I heard you're talking about quarterback rooms at Georgia, or
no, running back rooms. The running back room.
Yeah, I like it. I think Georgia's the odds-on favorite for a lot of reasons. You've got chaos and disruption at Alabama. That doesn't mean DeBoer can't go win a national championship. They've got the roster to do it if all the stars align, but it's still disruption, change. And so as far as running back room, if Auburn does not lose, for example, a Jeremiah Cobb to the transfer portal, I'm not saying that that's a rumor, but the one I worry about a little bit. Then if they live up to previous performance, man, I mean, there's a lot to like about Damari Alston, Jarquez Hunter, Jeremiah Cobb, even Batee, the little guy that is coming back, and then John Jackson probably should be playing more, but it's just a crowded room. So you got to like Auburn's if they get any kind of run blocking out to the second level and open some big explosive plays. But I mean, Georgia's always going to have a talented backfield. Normally, Alabama's always going to have an elite backfield and throw probably two or three other SEC teams in that mix.
Yeah,
and Rob's here. I think Doug brilliantly answered the question he thought he heard, but I think you asked a slightly different question because of the audio issues. But on running back room versus wide receiver room, who I think Derrick Henry was the last running back in the I could be wrong, but I believe Derrick Henry was the last running back in the SEC who was the showpiece of the offense. I mean, in the past handful of years, I can't recall any running back in the SEC across the SEC who's been the showpiece of the offense.
Great point.
Maybe Leonard Fournette a year or two later, but it's rare.
Yeah. You had Henry 13, 14, 15, Fournette 14, 15. No, 13, 14, 15, Fournette 14, 15, 16.
Yeah.
You know the leading returning rusher in the conference is, Doug Dean? Montrell Johnson, Florida.
Oh, at Florida, interesting. I would have, before last year, I would have guessed the running back at Ole Miss, Judkins.
But he's gone. Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gone now. So leading returning. Did he lead rushing a year ago, Rob, if you remember?
I don't think so, but he's just the leading returner because Judkins, I think, was at or near the top, but he's up at Ryan Day's daycare,
Right. I called him Ryan Foxley. Well, listen to Ryan Day. Silly me.
That's all right. We knew what you meant.
Oh yeah. It's a little bit of I've been under the weather for a week, so my savantism isn't quite what it normally can be.
Let me throw a provocative and kind of it's going to be a to be determined answer to this, but dynamic into the discussion if y'all are interested. Leave it to Jerry Jones, if y'all didn't talk about this before I joined you, to step out in the room. This might not be accurate, but that he allegedly, Jerry Jones, Cowboys owner, big Arkansas booster, has offered to double the NIL money of any Kentucky player with Coach Cal going from there. Talk about cannibalism and mercenary that just screams for some kind of enforcement oversight, and yet they can't because we're in this damn box between the Supreme Court of the United States and what they have said they would slap down or not, and the complete dysfunction of NCAA to do anything to rein this in and make it rational. But
Hey, Doug, I have more control over my blowout for the 3/4 of a mile down the I-10 in Phoenix than we have control over what the hell's going on over here.
Touche, Rob. I love you. Ryan Fox played at the Masters last week. That's correct. He also had a hole-in-one at the Players.
Yep.
Actually, was that on 17.
Ryan
Hey,
Fox.
listen.
Can I finish, guys? Let me finish the thought, and then y'all can react. Duff, I'm glad you still have a dark sense of humor, which I have a real appreciation for. The joke about death and dying in an RV in the Bingle one on the interstate. But so my point is, the question is, we're going to have 10 or 12, I guess, super uber wealthy NIL funded programs, and you know who they are. You can debate 5 or 6 more. That being so, and unless there is Congress, we shouldn't count on acting on anything. If you look how dysfunctional Congress has become, and if they ever were not, then the question to me is, is it going to become 4 or 5 teams that year in, year out dominate getting entered into the 12-team playoff, and then one of those 4 or 5 wins it year after year? There's no big surprises. If you get picked from 5 through 12, what you're getting is a chance to get blown out by Georgia, Alabama, or the usual suspects. Occasionally there will be a Tennessee or Auburn or Ole Miss that rises up and all the stars align and maybe they make a run. But my question is there a yin for that yang? By that I mean, we've seen it in basketball. Let's use Ole Miss as an example. I think Kiffin's doing this. Can you go get players that intentionally they are not going to be able to transfer very likely? They're not going to enter the draft very quickly. What you get is you get 3 years with them to develop. So you've got this core, and then if you've got $10 million in NIL money, make up a number, you can go get not 15 or 20 elite players, but just like Auburn 2010, go get 3 or 4 elite players, spend 7 figures for a great defensive lineman who dominates and a great quarterback. Can that work to challenge the 4 or 5 insanely wealthy programs that have no salary cap?
Well, Doug, I'll say it reminds me a lot of Major League Baseball, the haves and the have-nots. You know, it's why you don't see Kansas City and Pittsburgh and Oakland and these types of teams really have a shot to rise to the top. You've got mostly the big players, with the exception of an outlier like Tampa Bay has a good team every now and again, or Milwaukee. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think you're dead on, Doug. It's just going to be the usual suspects, because the mathematical chances of this are just going to be too harder for these smaller, less well-funded institutions and programs to be able to match. It's just, we've gone from the big 60 down to probably the big 15 before this thing's over with. I mean, it keeps getting distilled. And until Tommy Tuberville and Joe Manchin step up, which I thought they were going to do a year or two ago, which now the ball seems that it's been dropped. I just don't see putting the genie back in the bottle on this. I mean, it is going to be what it is. I agree with you.
Here's where we're going.
Danny Hurley at Connecticut, I think he is basketball's version of Moneyball. And, the Billy Bean and the Oakland A's, and it worked. And so, they've won back-to-back national championships, and they're going to win some more. I don't think that Moneyball construct exists. It's a different kind of Moneyball. It's what Jerry Jones is trying to do with Arkansas. It's like, well, let's buy a team.
Yeah,
and let's buy a team and give them a 2-year run, and they'll win a national championship. Then we'll break up the team, and then 3 or 4 years later, we'll buy another team and do that. I find that disgusting. I just think it's disgusting.
It is.
Billy Bean was using a screwdriver to tinker with the system. What Jerry Jones professed to do is take a sledgehammer and bully it.
Yep. And what we're going to have, I see this on the stage, like the E7 and the G20 economic summits. You're going to see the top schools in college athletics out there, and there'll be the superpower, one or two superpowers, like Ohio State. I heard this week they've got over $40 million in NIL. And I think we'll start seeing that. And then the World Bank, or the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, will dole out money to the lesser schools so they can, get 3 hots and a cot every day. Bullspit. I don't want to see that. Hey, I'm against anything that makes college sports more like pro sports. Doug Dean.
Well, and that was the wrong segue for my next straw man I want to throw up there for y'all to shoot up, because I never wanted college football to look and feel exactly like the NFL either. But here we are where we are. We manage these athletics, these collegiate athletics, with the world we actually live in, not the one I wish I lived in. So that being so, I wondered, and we really need some experts to enter in on a later show, Rob, and explain why the following would not be conceivable. There's a lot of things to architecture to tinker with, but the emergence of a college football draft, once the super conferences settle, follow me on this, they settle in, then let's say that's 40 teams, and on a voluntary basis, any high school or JUCO player whose valuation is over $300,000, they can voluntarily a draft. In other words, just like the NFL, they forego the right to choose where they're going to live and go to school and play football during college. And in return, you've got, let's call it 40 teams, 8 rounds of a draft. If you want to championship in Michigan, you get the last pick this coming draft, just like the NFL. You're the best team, now you get to draft last.
Well, I love what Doug is saying.
Yep.
And he's got a connection issue, but the draft, do we go to that? And hopefully Doug will be back with us, but can you imagine that? What makes college so special, though, is the regionalness of it. And, it used to be a regional sport. We've talked about it a lot on the show, the way it was a regional sport, the way you could only be on 5 times in 2 years, and there'd be different games on for different parts of the country. But after 1984 and the CFA lawsuit with Chuck Ninus, the head of the CFA in Oklahoma and Georgia, that all changed, and then the internet changed. I mean, you can go and virtually live if you live in Immokalee, Florida, and virtually live in Seattle, if you love the Huskies, and it's crazy.
Well, I think the selection process of these kids of where they want to go to school, I think that would rule out a draft. But what you could have is almost like a waiver sort of system. Like when somebody goes to go, the teams that need the most help can actually have the first crack at them, but the student would have the ability to not want to go to that school. You're going to have these kids with their higher, and I'm using air quotes, higher education. They're going to have that choice of where they want to go get schooling. And so where I think Doug's point is, these lesser teams, after you get through all these big money grabs, at that point in time, there has to be some equity to it, but there has to be the selection for that student athlete to make that decision, but maybe on a waiver sort of basis, as opposed to a fixed draft where the university gets that call.
Doug Dean, you were rolling. Pick up where you left off about the draft.
Yeah, iPhone was not happy with me, so I was calling it overheat. Heat against them charging. And the reason I called it a straw man of the ludicrous idea of a college football draft, that's so un-American. Why shouldn't players get to decide where they're going to go to college? Well, you ask the same question of why shouldn't a player coming out of college get to decide which NFL team they want to go play at? Because they're trying to create a level playing field. And I would think that the time's going to come where TV starts to suffer, because people, if it's only the same damn 4 or 5 teams every year, unless you're a fan of one of those schools, then eyes start to turn away from TV eventually. So something has got to give. And my concept is basically to tap the brakes on this insane, unlimited NIL funding that it defines winners and losers by who's got the most billionaire boosters like Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, again, you go to Little Rock. The tallest building in town is Stevens, largest off-Wall Street investment bank in America. They are strong. I mean, they are strong. That one of them's got over $7 billion himself. And you've got Jerry Jones, who's part of that Little Rock crowd. And then you've got the Northwest corner, and there's families up there people aren't talking about that I know a little about. Not saying I know everything, but there's a lot of money. They haven't been really that fired up about this, but now that Jerry Jones has made what he said, Doug, and I saw your text last night about that. I mean, look, Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys in 1988, 89 for $165 million. I talked to a guy who was with him at the Miami-Arkansas game in 1987, because I know I was in Knoxville. That was the day Tennessee tied Auburn 20-all. They beat Arkansas in Little Rock 51-7. And this guy I know from Pine Bluff said I was in the audience with Jerry Jones because we're friends, and he said, that guy right there, I'm going to hire him. We're going to win Super Bowls. He goes, I'm going to buy the Dallas Cowboys. Jimmy Johnson, from Beaumont. But, Doug, you send out stuff, and you're so damn right about and you make these provocative, points and straw man, whatever. You're right, though. It is un-American to tell a college kid where he's got to go, but we let it happen in the pros. So we know what the courts have said. 9-0, guys. Somebody take a stab at that. It's all about antitrust laws. And we'll get our resident barrister back on, Jack Turner. But, Doug, if you want to follow up on that, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, to Duffy's point earlier, baseball, curiously, got an antitrust exemption. So we keep saying things done. Well, we can do whatever we want if enough pressure gets put on Supreme Court, Congress, athletic TV moguls, whatever it takes. We're heading to spoil it a level playing. I want football. For example, does anybody want UCLA to suck in football? I don't.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
She's got the wrong experience.
Yeah, I don't. Doug, Doug,
Go ahead.
Doug, you were saying you don't want UCLA. I don't want to see just 6 teams and the rest of us no good.
My point is now the Pac-12 did some things. LA did some things to self-destruct. The 95th ranked recruit. We got some background noise on somebody. Y'all check your ambient.
Yeah, Frank, I don't know if that's Frank. Yeah. But go ahead, Doug.
Anyway, so I would like that powder blue UCLA uniform to still intimidate. To look, it's been a long time. USC's had its moments, but I want 60 or 70 teams that have at least a puncher's chance to recruit and coach, and the players work hard and have a magical year. And I think fans can live with it. If you only have a magical year every 6 or 7 years, that's fine. You're in the hunt. And I don't understand why we would try to create a massively dominated 5 or 6 teams that the same damn logo is on there year after year.
Well, I think the combination of all that we're talking about now in the past 20 minutes that's gone wrong with college football, I think we're all in violent agreement on it. I think this coming year with the 12-team playoff and the massive conference realignments, it's either going to make what we're talking about a hell of a lot worse, or maybe it's going to start to turn the corner towards positive change. We'll see. I've never been more excited about or curious or intrigued about an upcoming college football season as I am this one coming up, just because of everything. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. If it starts to make it better, that's good. If it makes it a hell of a lot worse, maybe that's good too, because then maybe sane heads will do what needs to long overdue with the NCAA and find some new governance structure. But yeah, this season is going to, if not answer a lot of questions, it's going to answer some questions and tee up a whole lot more questions.
Doug Dean, I love what he just said. Great commentary, Dave. And Doug, think about this. I think the college football, where we are, college athletics is a lot like the stock market. About you have small corrections of 5 to 10%, medium 10 to 20, and about every 2.5, 3 years, you have a 20 to 30 point correction. We're going through a correction right now. And we have said this on this show since you joined us 4 years ago, and Dave and Frank and everybody, that bottom line, we've had interruptions along the way, but we don't want to see just a small handful of teams dominate, because that's the NFL. Right now, it's boring. I mean, ask the Lions fans. Like, money alone can't solve the problem. When you've got Ford Motor Company, backing the Lions, the Ford family, they own the Lions. That's not it. Money, if money can solve it, it's not a problem. Don't you, Doug? I think there's truth to that. You got to have the right people and a commitment.
If Doug doesn't talk, I will. But I'll hold on.
Doug, you got it.
Yeah, I'll talk then. A few weeks ago we were talking about systems coaches and game coaches in college basketball, and that construct applies in baseball. And while Texas is not the Rangers aren't the deepest funded team, and they win the World Series. Bruce Bochy is their manager. Bruce Bochy has never lost a Game 7 in his life. That's a game coach right there. That's a game manager. That's a guy that when it's an elimination game, he figures out a way to win. I don't think that really exists in football. I think in football, it's all about the system. And if the system is going to prefer, the top 4 or 5 teams and just them, college football as a national sport gets boring. And that will manifest itself in the next series of TV deals that happen. If this madness continues and the good people of Louisiana start, watching the Saints on Sunday more than they watch the Bengal Tigers on Saturday, and same with the Jaguars in Florida, et cetera, and college football loses the SEC, game over. I mean, that's micro up to macro ending the game, with the TV contracts being macro down to micro ending the game. But I mean, it's a time of uncertainty and peril. And to your point, Rob, it is a major market correction. I mean, this is post 9/11. This is Great Recession, et cetera, in college football. And but we have one more kind of market thing to play out that we don't know yet, which is next season.
Yeah, Doug, finish up. You were making some great points.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know if it's on my end or otherwise, but it's just breaking up. Like it's hard to hear y'all. But so, on the question, I want to be real clear on this. I really don't mind a dynasty program like Coach Saban deserves full credit for creating. And I don't mind a program winning the national championship 3 years in a row or however many years. But I want it to be a result of, yes, you recruit. Obviously, talent acquisition is king. And great coaching, a great system, timely, big plays made, a creation of a football brand where you've got a home field advantage, and all those things. That's achievement and hard work. But I will vomit on and get disinterested in 3 straight years of a national champion that's result of primarily nothing more than having a few more billionaires than the rest of college football. That is bullshit. And we need to staying at home and turning our TVs off if that's what's going to be created.
Yep.
Doug, what you just said should be a God Bless America. That should be a commercial. I agree with you. That is absolute BS. And Frank, when he comes back in, Frank, are you there? It's like he's frozen. Oh, there you go. But
there's no room for a George Steinbrenner.
Turn off our TVs and give the to the people that think this is cool and quit saying these athletes are victims. The fans are the real victims, but I don't like to use the term victim because that's a weak term. But Frank, go ahead.
There's no room for a George Steinbrenner in college football.
No,
Steinbrenner saying, "Hey, I'm more important to the Yankees than Derek Jeter." Bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, we all approach fall. When we all get to fall practice, we all feel like we've got a shot, right? For the most part, let's just use the SEC. We all think we got a shot. We got a puncher's chance to make it, right? Even in the Alabama, except for Vanderbilt, we all got a puncher's chance to make it, even in the Saban dynasty. But what you can't have is if you're in this, basically this uncapped salary situation, and you're going up against the top 5, again, like Major League Baseball, I'll use it again. Yeah, damn right the Dodgers should be in it every year. Look at their payroll. Yeah, the Yankees should have been in it every year when Steinbrenner was running the show. He was overpaying people by 5 times because he had the money to do it. He had the will to do it. And that's not college athletics. That is, it's just cronyism. And look, I get it. And God bless Jerry Jones for stepping up and doing it, because until it's outlawed, he's got the ability to do it. But to Doug's point was we got to have some sort of control, some oversight on a congressional basis or even as a czar of college football that sets some, ground rules down. If not, everybody's going to be disinterested if you go into it every year and the best you're going to do is the Outback Bowl.
Yeah, Doug.
Yeah, and I would want to add to this discussion. Can't believe I'm taking on a Supreme Court justice guy. But when Justice Kavanaugh so cavalierly played tough guy and said, I dare you to come back here. We will slap down any attempts to limit what young student athletes can earn in competition. Okay, that's great, Kavanaugh. But now here's what we've got. Not one smidge of this, except for the ladies' side of it, is actually name, image, and likeness. It's unbridled pay for play. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, you're so right. You're so right, Carl. But you are. And I'm gonna throw this one at you. When we were kids growing up, you remember we were told by the minders on the 3 city blocks in Manhattan, 6 multinational corporations, that we should all pull for a Dodgers and Yankees Subway Series, because that's the way it is. You got a bunch of people that don't drive, that take the subway everywhere, that don't know how to change a tire, skin a buck, run a trot line. I mean, seriously, they're not out in the real world, and they play stickball. They don't understand. Frank was right. We live for these Saturdays, man. You don't get married if you're smart and you want people to come to your wedding. Don't be rude. Don't get married during college football season. Seriously. But what
Not in the
happens, though,
South.
people will go, well, the groom and the bride, their teams had a bye that weekend. Well, what about everybody else coming to your wedding? God almighty, come on. I mean, seriously, it literally, I mean, my own sister's wedding, I remember being in the phone booth because it was a long time ago, and on the phone listening to the radio from a friend holding it up to the phone, Auburn, Georgia Tech, October 15th, 1983, and Auburn won the game. It was a struggle. Auburn kicked the late field goal, and I still remember Bill Curry pissed off at Coach Dye as he walked across the field, and they were going, Rob, come on, you're in the wedding. I said, hold on. I literally was causing
Greco.
friction, and my two older sisters were mad at me. Surprise. And they
Hey,
but Doug, Doug, I know you do the dose. You need the three of y'all. I love what we have talked about today. You can't. I do not want to see half of that, even though if it's one of your schools. College football, college sports are good for America, Frank Duffy. You're out in California. I don't know if you heard what Doug said a minute ago, and I loved it. I want to see those powder blue jerseys of UCLA scare people again in college football.
Yeah.
I love it when we have Rick Neuheisel on here. He was a walk-on from McClintock High School in Phoenix out there that was told, well, Terry Donahue told him, he said, you're going to Yale? He goes, yeah. He goes, I didn't think you were good enough. He goes, you don't think you can be my quarterback? He goes, I do. I mean, we need that. It's good for America, Frank Duffy. You're out there.
Yeah, the big brands, it just feels better when the big brands are playing better. It's like when you watch Florida, to use the analogy we were talking about before. When you see Florida go into disrepair, that's not right. There's something wrong about that. So no, you want your childhood hero programs to do well. Look, no different than Alabama when they were going through the Shula and DuBose days and the Mike Price thing. I mean, it didn't seem right. Going to a game in Bryant-Denny in 2003 and having a sponsor for Alabama football hand me and my son 50-yard line seats because nobody was going. It's wrong. And the crazy thing is that to get this thing back, it shouldn't be like an Oklahoma land rush. And that's what this thing is turning into. Doug is right. It's going to be how many multi-billionaires you've got lined up to do it. And there are just some schools and some states that just don't have that lineup.
Way back when I made my first trip out I-10 through Palm Springs from Phoenix to LA, the journey that Frank's got interrupted yesterday, but thank goodness not permanently interrupted.
Yeah.
That was in 1990. I was headed out to Stanford, and back then the Pac-10 was something. I mean, you had USC, UCLA, Washington, Stanford had a great football program then.
Yeah.
And Saturdays mattered. I mean, Cal had a good football program.
Yeah.
I mean, that was so fun for me for the first time in my life to experience a Stanford UCLA game in the Rose Bowl. I mean, how cool was that?
Yeah.
That's all over now. And that's never coming back. That's all over.
Doug Dean, pick up on that. Great stuff. I agree with that.
Well, I was going to say, and what I'm going to say people will correctly say, do you watch Leave It to Beaver, Doug, in your free time? This is going to sound like I wish I lived in 1950 in many ways. I do exactly that. But, we could have sanity if the billionaires could all meet at Augusta National and have a cocktail and say, listen, gentlemen's agreement, we got to be careful about antitrust and collusion here. But we're not going to cross the line, the Rubicon, and into insanity. And we'll have a gentleman's agreement that, in no instance, will our school offer more than $1.5 million for any player. And again, that's like wishing we were in the 1950s, where there was integrity and ethics and rational thought between gentlemen, and there's anything but that these days.
Well. And you just talked about that. I remember, we all remember as kids growing up, man, we watched that Southern Cal UCLA game. We cared about it. Charles White, student body right, Marcus Allen. After that, we watched it, and I'm telling you, I listened to a lot of motivation tapes and videos and how to get better. And we've college sports. When you go to a college game, people in the South, they're not all wearing jerseys. You go to a Giants Jets game, it might as well be WWE SmackDown. It's just it's a different element. There are more business deals done in the South during college football season, in a duck blind, in a trout stream. I mean, that don't take away that which we love so much. I mean, I really, this has been some of the best stuff we've done because we got smart people. There's nothing wrong with listening to older, wiser people because they've seen things. This isn't the first time we've had some controversy in college. It won't be the last, but damn it, we have no leadership, and the NCAA needs to be pushed out of the way. And I don't want to call anyone a czar because I think of the Russians. That ain't good. Let's just get a commissioner and just rule with let's listen to the fans, Frank Duffy.
When players were paid the old-fashioned way with a briefcase in a West Jefferson motel room, it was honor amongst thieves. There is a code. There's a pirate's code that went on, and that is far more honorable than what we're seeing today.
Pirates code.
I mean, just last week was the Masters, and I love and the Masters is a private club, and you can't quite apply it to college football. I love their governance structure. I mean, the Masters, Augusta National is loaded with billionaires in membership. But the governance structure is, at the end of the day, it all comes up to one person, Fred Ridley, the chairman, who makes all the decisions.
And
there's some inclusion there, but ultimately there's one throat to choke there. And I think that's what college football needs. And
it's what's best for the Masters. That's what's at stake. It's not the sum of the parts, but it's the whole. And look, I've said this long ago. We need to get Congress out the way and the knucklehead in the White House right now. If we could put in the Masters management team and a management team of Chick-fil-A, we'd rule the world again.
Yeah. Doug Dean? Yeah.
I was just going to say to Dave's point, I might get in trouble here, Rob, but to Augusta National, you're welcome from the Catholic Church for the notion of absolute central papal authority. It really, I mean, it's got its problems, but in speed and decisions made, you don't want a committee, you want a central authority.
Let me say this too.
The only thing at Augusta National that is really committee based is a succession committee. So when it's time for Fred to step down, there is a committee, with all the billionaires that decides who the next chairman is.
Here's something of interest. If you're a member of Augusta National and you die, your family, they don't just give the membership to the family.
No.
They do it right. And I'll tell you something else. Don't think for a minute if they wanted to, they could charge a small fortune for pimento cheese and egg salad sandwiches, yet they charge $1.
Yeah.
You know what? It can be done.
Yep. I think we've ended the show on a great note. Let's apply Augusta National and the Masters to college football.
Yeah. And as Lauren said last week, it's a private club. We'll let in who we want to. You don't tell us what to do.
Yep.
They get no funding from the federal government. They don't have to do it.
And they do now more for youth golf. Youth golf that has minorities. Yeah. They do more for women's golf.
That's right.
I mean, all of those things that was part of the criticism before. They have eclipsed all that, and they do more for diverse interests in golf than any of the governing bodies in golf.
Yeah.
I mean, that says a lot. I mean, more than the PGA, more than the USGA, more than the RNA. I mean, that's case closed.
Doug, guys, I think what Dave just said is right. When people let people do things when they want to, when you try to force people to do something, they resent it and they're not going to do it. The best things come when you take ownership of them. Frank Duffy, I think you were muted. See if we can try you now.
Well, I don't know what part was. I'm sure it was something brilliant and pithy and off the top of my head. But no, look, there are two different things here. We're talking about Augusta, which I agree. They have they rule with a velvet hand, and if you don't like it, there's I-20 right outside the gates on Washington Avenue. You can hit it. The problem is that when you've got people that come in and take over and rule in a competitive sense, like we're talking about with college athletics, it is not to the detriment of the whole. It is for their own personal adulation or gain. And that's the big difference. I love Augusta National. I love the fact that they say it's our way or the highway. But a Jerry Jones coming in and saying, hey, guess what? I can do this. I'm going to plunk down $5 billion and buy every athlete that I can find to finally get the Hogs back on top. I don't think that's a good thing. And
I don't either.
We need to have that.
Who's not a member of Augusta National? Jerry Jones.
Yeah, that's right.
Neither is Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Well, he is. But Bill Clinton is not.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what it is. You've got a lot of wealthy people at Augusta National, but they get along and they realize, hey, we're part of something bigger than us. And I don't like, you can say, well, yeah, we always talk about there's a handful of these families at a lot of schools that are called on to give the money. But the bottom line, I just got to wonder. I got to wonder what if we don't follow the rule of the masters. They've got it figured out. They've got a great model.
Absolutely. No, I think we're ending the show on a great note. Just follow the masters. I mean, it has worked, from its inception with Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts. It works now with Fred Ridley. It'll work with the next, chairman. And who knows? That chairman might be Annika Sorenstam or Condoleezza Rice. We don't know.
Yeah.
What we do know is that the committee at Augusta that will choose the next successor to Fred Ridley, they will make a good choice. He was a great choice. Billy Payne was a great choice. Jackson Stevens was a great choice. I mean, they've never made a bad choice. Yeah,
they really do. The bottom line is, look, I'm going to wrap it up now. Great show today. Great topics. We got a solution out of this. Follow the masters model. It works. Yep. They could charge $20 a sandwich. I'm sure people would pay it because you're at the Masters. They don't. If money can solve it, it's really not a problem. Applies to this. We got to start using our brains and let's don't have a monopoly, collusion. You can't deny people with antitrust laws the right to earn life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's already, we know that. That's in our Constitution. If people read the Constitution, but unbelievable stuff, man. Let me just say this, folks. Great show. Smash the subscribe button. Join us. We'll be back on Monday morning. Thanks to all of our sponsors like Hewlett & Dunn, ECS House Industries, the great folks at The Vitamin Shop, Rumble Boxing, Gateway Tire and Service Centers, Web-Footed Kennels, Clay Smoked Tuna all over Memphis. Check it out, claysmoketuna.com. But we'll be back Monday. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, people. This show is about having the best guests, engaging them, and coming up with solutions. We'll be back on for you. Have a great weekend, everybody. We are out of here.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.